kind of similar to like what you said of back in high school of like you didn't know that that was an option to make money from the graphic design. I didn't know that was an option that you can have an agency to do that. And so I remember coming in on Monday and telling you of like, you and Caitlin, I was like, so we're starting to advertise an agency. And I remember you guys looking at me like, okay, what?
Yeah, the thing is, like, you guys will soon find out that Devin has a lot of ideas, a lot of crazy ideas, but like you're always thinking ahead. And yeah, that was one of those crazy ideas where we're just like, an agency, like we're a screen printing shop.
All right. Thank you and welcome back to the Doing Everything Different podcast. I'm excited today. This is going to be a conversation that I think is going to add a lot of value to people. Today we got our creative director from Kurieo, Mike Nguyen, who I'm very, very excited to just talk to and have a conversation because we've been at this for a while, for several years now. And I think, it's been a process to get to where we are. And I think it's going to be cool to kind of bring people in from the agency and the team and kind of talk about their experiences and, share some insights and things that they learned. So Mike, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I think from a standpoint of like, it's funny because we go way back, right? I think that from a standpoint of when we first met was in what year was that?
I believe it's 2013 is when we first met. Yeah,
That's
it was
crazy because you had just graduated.
directly right when I graduated college. I went to college for my design degree. Literally, probably like a week or two afterwards, you had reached out to me about a job. And yeah, I think that's when we first met. It's just I came in, I interviewed, and yeah, we kind of went from there.
That's dope. Well, let's why don't you talk a little bit about what it is that you do at Kurieo and your role, and then we could kind of take it back to the beginning and how we got here.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Nguyen. I am the creative director at Kurieo. I've been working with Kurieo for 6 years now. Pretty much when we first started, I was the very first employee at Kurieo. Um, I pretty much just lead creative with everything in Kurieo. I also like to get my hands dirty sometimes and actually still do design work.
Yeah, that's dope. And so that's crazy because Kurieo is 6 years old, but we go back way before then, even when it was D&D Airbrush, and started with that. So let's go back to the beginning because I think that that's going to be super important in terms of like how you set up your career and things like that. So were you what kind of person were you in high school growing up? Were you always into like art, drawing? What did that look like?
Yeah, I was, I guess you could call myself a doodler. I used to doodle in my notebook all the time, always on my homework. Always into like art and culture. Never really thought of graphic design as a career at the time being. I think back in our era too, graphic design wasn't even really that big yet. Social media wasn't really a thing yet. So yeah, I just like drawing, sketching. Never really took it serious till I graduated high school. And I was kind of at a path where it was just like, hey, like, what am I going to do with my life? My sister had went to school for business. And I think even growing up in an Asian household, you're like, okay, you get to decide between like being a nurse, doctor, doing something within business, something that's going to make you money. So I think graphic design was just never anything that really crossed my mind until I got into college. I went to Ohlone and I started taking some art classes. And then I started to decide like, hey, I can actually make graphic design a career after taking a few classes. So yeah, I think after that, I started taking graphic design more seriously, entered a design program at East Bay. Graduated with my bachelor's in design, and then soon after we started working together.
That's dope. I think you said something that was interesting, and I would like to kind of go more into that. How was your family's reaction when you did say that you wanted to get into graphic design initially?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really know what graphic design was at the moment, until you really broke it down to them and just was like, "Hey, this it's within art." And I think once you hear the word art, especially in an Asian household, they're like, "Oh, that's not going to make you money." So wasn't initially very excited about it, but I think at that time, my sister had already gone and did her career path. They were a little bit iffy about me being the son, being the boy. They knew I wasn't the best in high school with like academics and everything. So I think just the fact that I wanted to do something and I was passionate about it, they're happy. So I was very fortunate to be in that type of situation.
That's dope because you hear that a lot around people that want to do something with their careers, but their family doesn't support it. And it's like, how do you navigate that? Because you are getting the pressure from, your family to do that. And you have to make a decision. Am I going to live for them or am I going to
Yeah.
do, kind of do my own thing? Um, that's dope. So what was your experience like in college, like going through the courses and stuff?
Yeah, I think initially I was just really excited. I was at a crossroads for a while, just like, what major am I going to do? Like, is it business? I'm not truly passionate about business, so that wasn't really any avenue that I wanted to explore. I think I found out that I wanted to do graphic design, I think taking the courses, I was just genuinely very excited and happy that I'm getting to do what I wanted to do. And the thing is, too, when you take graphic design classes and courses, especially in college, you don't only just do graphic design, like you do art history,
Mhm.
you do like 3D design, you do a lot of workshopping in hand stuff. So not only is it just like digital graphics, but you're taking like drawing classes and stuff too. So I think working within those different avenues, not only do you pigeonhole yourself within design, I think um, it really opens your eyes about like all things creative. Like you could do photography, you could do drawing, you could do sketching, painting, you could do molding, pottery, whatever you want to do, which was really cool to experience.
That's dope. Did you know what you wanted to do with it? Like, did you want to start like your own design firm? Did you want to work at an agency? Did you want to start your own brand? Like, what did you kind of envision yourself back then, seeing yourself doing with it?
Yeah, yeah. I think at the time, like when I started design classes, I think it's really just looking up to the people that you follow. At the time, I think Johnny Cupcakes was the huge thing, and he ran a clothing line. And I think with following people like Johnny Cupcakes, Benny Gold, he had a clothing line also, but then he also started working at an agency. I think when you look up to people like that and see where they went with their career path, you can kind of see yourself in that light. Like, hey, maybe I can start a clothing brand also. So I think early on, like, yeah, I wanted to create my own clothing brand. I also wanted to get into like editorial design once I started getting into a few of those classes. So like designing for magazines, newspapers, stuff like that. But yeah, I think what really molded me to where I am today is pretty much following other designers and other creatives that did a similar path to what I wanted to follow.
That's dope. I love that. Yeah, I think everybody kind of sets out and has those inspirations to look up to, and it's interesting of being able to kind of look at the roadmap that they laid out and kind of make your own within that and adjustment.
Exactly.
So yeah, so that's dope. And I think in 2013, so to kind of take it back to that time, I had a screen printing business that I had started in 2008, and so we had, I think, one employee at the time. I think Kyle was yeah, Kyle was working with us, right?
Yeah.
Or
Cal
did you
was
come
working
on?
with us. Cal was working with us at the time. It was pretty much me, you, and him for a while.
Yeah. So we had our first employee who was kind of like in the shop doing the production, and so it was time where we needed a graphic designer. And so I remember I was going on everywhere, Craigslist, Facebook. I was trying to find a graphic designer and couldn't find anybody that was good, right? Everybody just didn't have it. And so I had one of our clients. had a logo that was designed, and I asked him where he got it designed, and so he gave me your card. And as soon as I just seen it, I could tell like the aesthetic that you did, like the way that the design was laid out, and then the business card that you had. I was just like, this dude got it, and I need to reach out to him. And so I sent you a message. I called you. I blew your phone up, tried to get in contact with you, and then what was that? What was that like? Because sometimes I could be you know a lot of I was persistent in terms of reaching out. What?
No, I remember that clearly. I looked at my phone. I believe I was like out doing something, but I looked at my phone. I had like four missed calls and like a voicemail. Yeah, we definitely need to pop that logo up because yeah, it's funny looking back at the designs when I first started to where I am now. But yeah, I think at the time I was super excited. Like I freshly had just graduated college, like probably like 2 weeks in. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was applying to different places. And then I get this voice message of you pretty much like saying, hey, like, I seen your work. Would really love for you to come in to meet me. You kind of told your story about like what you do too. So I was really excited then. I remember I came up with like a portfolio piece.
Mhm.
I had my little binder. I had like all my designs that I did in class and everything. Yeah, I definitely try to impress when I came in for that interview. But
It was super
yeah,
organized, and I was just like, I liked all the stuff, and I think that you brought a cool energy, right? Because I'm big on that of just you skill set, but then also energy in terms of just building everything out. And we only had one employee, so it wasn't like we were a huge team.
yeah.
And so I know that probably was a little scary for you too, I would assume, coming into just kind of a real startup, right? Like boots on the ground,
Yeah, honestly,
startup.
at the time being, like a job was a job for me. Like, especially doing graphic design and doing the thing that I love, it was just, hey, this is my first opportunity. Like, I was willing to just take it.
Yeah, and I think that it was interesting because I've always had this kind of idea of how we wanted to we had our screen printing business and we were doing that and doing stuff for clients, but it was something that I always wanted to do was starting our own clothing company, which was the doing everything different. Originally started in 2008 as kind of wanting to be a brand. And so when I know that you came on, I was thinking, okay, cool. It's something that we can do to bring on to help with all the screen printing stuff, but then we can also kind of launch and do the doing everything different stuff. And we have been through a lot of changes and evolutions over the years, and I think that during the whole time of the screen printing side of things, it was a lot of lessons learned, a lot of growing pains. We went through a lot of different designers and a lot of different employees and stuff like that. Um, I think that like thinking from your experience around um, design and just learning during that time of like the work and stuff like that, did a lot of things that you learned in college kind of resonate into what you applied in working and stuff? Or was that something that you learned on the job? Or like, how did that correlate from the sense of what you learned to what you actually had to, apply?
Yeah, yeah, good question. Essentially, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I learned in design school, I think it definitely applied to what we were doing at the screen printing shop. But then there was also a lot that I had to learn on the go. I think, especially when we joined, we were a startup. We only had a few employees. Like I came in, like I was literally the art department when I first came in, so I had to learn everything on the fly. Things from like screen separations, how to prepare artwork. Yeah, I never came from a screen printing background, so I had to learn everything then and there, and as I went along. But I can say like definitely a good amount of what I learned in school I actually applied to what we were doing to the day to day. But then there's a lot that I had to learn on my own also.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think what's cool about this, and I want to, I really want to kind of go into detail on this because we've tried starting and stopping and launching, doing everything different, literally since the beginning and where you started. And I think what's fascinating about this is we're at a place right now where we have been able to build out a team and build out an infrastructure and build out the, the resources and all the things that we have to actually launch it the way that we want. It's translating into podcast, media, content, and then, eventually merchandise and stuff like that. And so I think one of the biggest things was how we had to do the ebbs and flows of all that stuff and on it and continuously readjusting. And actually the doing everything different campaign that we did was what kind of triggered the whole thing of starting Kurieo and the agency. So I want to talk about the United campaign because I think that that was a big learning lesson and that was a big thing for us. So to give some context, we put together in 2016 a campaign called Let's Be United. It was, during the elections and everybody was all, the world was divided and crazy. And so I was thinking about putting together a campaign of just like, essentially we all want the same things in life. It's just the problem that we're having is the lack of communication and the lack of understanding. And if we open up that communication and that dialogue, we'll see that like a lot of people have more things in common than they think. And so we put together this like really detailed campaign, and we had no experience or background, putting together a campaign. Let's talk about what that was like because I think that that was a project that was not only pivotal for us, but it was something that was eye opening. Of like, wait, we can actually put together, some campaigns.
Yeah, we always talk about this. Like, I think the United campaign was a huge milestone for us. This was a little bit when, the screen printing shop started to progress a little bit more. So we started to have a graphic designer underneath me. We had a team that actually was able to work on the campaign. So, yeah, that was like our first initial agency project that we did for ourselves, but we weren't even an agency yet. I think we didn't have any experience about running any type of campaign. I think what we did at the moment was just we did printing and production. We literally have just done like screen printing at the time. So even getting into like packaging and other items that went into the kit, I think that was a new avenue for us. But in terms of the campaign development, yeah, like we only had probably like a team of 4 to 5 of us. There wasn't many of us, but small but mighty team. Yeah, we literally went into the conference room at our office at the time, and then we would do day-to-day meetings about just like how we can create this kit, like who's our target audience, what's the mission, what do we want to get at with this, like how can we make this impactful. Um, but it was really cool just to be in that collaborative effort, just because we've never really gotten to do that, especially with like running a screen printing shop. There's not much that you can collaborate on. Um, so yeah, everything from like conceptualizing to setting up photo shoots, video production, doing packaging for the kit, conceptualizing designs for the packaging and the T-shirt and the merch that was going inside the kit. Um, we honestly, yeah, we did an agency project when we weren't even an agency yet, which was huge.
Yeah, we didn't even know what an agency was. I think that's the biggest part. And I think from
Yeah,
from my perspective, it was like that project and campaign was hella fun. And I remember we had a good time doing it. Now the campaign didn't go according to plan because we didn't really know what we were doing, right? It was our first kind of time launching
yeah.
that. And we had done several, launches before that, trying to get doing everything different off of the ground. And I think what happened is it got to a point from my perspective where it was like it felt like damn nobody's trying to hear anything positive, right? And it felt like it was a failure, even though we got a crazy good feedback from it. But I was kind of tracking the measurements of how many boxes do we sell versus like it was more of an awareness campaign, not so much to sell product. And I remember I was just like I felt very defeated after we launched it and it didn't go according to plan or how I thought it was going to go. It didn't go super viral and all this stuff. And I remember talking to my mentor, and he was just talking about how maybe maybe you should start a advertising agency. And I'm like, man, Chris, I don't even know what you're talking about. An advertising agency, I'm stressed out. I'm trying to run this screen printing shop that I really felt miserable at because I felt like the campaign work was very different than the screen printing, right? Like we were doing the screen printing stuff and it was a very messy business. You know, it was very low margins. It was very just hard dealing with client stuff, production issues, and all of these things. And I feel like we were fighting between two different worlds from the agency side and then the production side. And so I think it got to a point where I was just like, I just felt super defeated. I remember going talking to Chris on a Friday, and then he told me that and was like, "You should start an advertising agency." I just felt super overwhelmed because it was like I took all my attention off the screen printing shop to try to do this campaign, and then the screen printing shop was suffering. You know, Kyle was stressed out because it wasn't getting the attention that it needed, and I think that like we didn't have a big team back then. So it was like everybody needed to do kind of everything. And that weekend, I remember just Googling like, what is that? What is an advertising agency? And I realized it was you get paid to do marketing campaigns and like do the marketing part for stuff. And I didn't even realize that that was an option. Um, Kind of similar to like what you said of back in high school of like you didn't know that that was an option to make money from the graphic design. I didn't know that was an option that you can have an agency to do that. And so I remember coming in on Monday and telling you of like you and Caitlin, I was like, so we're starting to advertise an agency. And I remember you guys looking at me like, okay, what?
See, yeah. The thing is, like, you guys will soon find out that Devin has a lot of ideas, a lot of crazy ideas, but like, you're always thinking ahead. And yeah, that was one of those crazy ideas where we're just like, an agency, like, we're a screen printing shop. But what's funny is, like, we've had clients come up to us, like, many times on just different things that an agency would do. Like, we had done websites, we've done rebrands, we've done logos, like literally we were a screen printing shop, but like being a screen printing shop, you're working with people's brands and they're always looking to update or refresh their brand. And of course,
Yeah.
having designers on our team, they're going to ask like, hey, can you do logo designs? Can you do website designs? Can you do business cards? Um, so at the time, like, yeah, it seemed like a crazy idea, but literally we were running an agency just with the screen printing side of things.
Yeah. And I got to think and like, you know, we've talked about this before, and I've apologized for all the crazy ideas because I'll spin in a lot of different
Yeah.
directions, and it's like, all right, we're doing this now, we're doing this now, we're doing this, and I think that I think what's cool around that is like you have to find the balance of it. Of course, I think that as we've progressed and learned, like it's finding the balance of how do you do that, and of course, bringing in Sheena, our COO, has kind of been able to balance the yin and yang of okay, the structure of how we're getting there, and then the thinking over here of like ahead. But I think that is the balance of that is necessary to be able to keep moving forward. And I remember like we were talking about trying to come up with a name, right? We were trying to come up with the Curio name, and I remember we were just like, I was like, hey, let's find a name, and we're not gonna leave here until by the time we leave here for the day, we're gonna have a name for the agency. And it was I remember it was me, you, and Caitlin, and we were going, and I was in my office searching stuff, and I was like, I was just searching everything on URLs and stuff, and then somehow I came up with Curio with a K because all agencies spell names differently, right? And so I'm like, all right, cool. And then I looked at the URL and I was like, Curio. I was like, cool, that's it. And I bought the URL and I walked in there and I was like, all right, we're gonna call it Curio. And I remember it sounded like Oreo and Cheerio.
But I mean, you had meaning behind the Curio too. Like explain to everybody why you chose Curio. Like, it's not only like the misspelling, but there's actually like meaning behind it. But
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, Curio means a small collective piece that is a collector's item and valuable. And so I figured that every kind of piece of work that we do creates meaning and it's kind of valuable. And I think that like honestly, the way that my mind works is I find something that works and then I create meaning around it sometimes. So I don't know which one came first. I don't know if the meaning came first or the name came first, but
yeah,
it all worked out and it transformed. And I think what was interesting about this, and I think what's cool about our story and how it kind of evolved into what it did was all right, we're transitioning to a creative agency, right? And so I was like, all right, what we need to do is I want to get out of production. So I want to literally get out of the manufacturing side of things. So we were talking about all right, I'm gonna sell all the equipment and sell everything, and then we're gonna transition into this, which was extremely challenging to be able to do and kind of put together because I've been screen printing my entire career, and that's the only way that I knew how to make money. So transitioning and saying we're going to start a creative agency when we don't even know what the hell agency is and how agencies operate was very I was very nervous, right? And so I had to learn a lot of different ways of how to operate that. And I think from a standpoint of going heavy into the design aspect of it, there was a lot of there was a lot of uncertainty around it, right? There was a lot of uncertainty. I didn't know how we were going to pay the bills. I didn't know how we were going to do any of this stuff because it was going to be a big transition. And I think one thing that was pivotal that I think was super impactful, and I think it was 100% the right decision of where we went is we pitched for West County to do what was it, the Teach West County or whatever. We did a campaign, and I remember, we pitched for that, and then you and I had a conversation, and you had made a decision to accept an offer at a larger corporation, and I remember that it was hard for me, but I knew 1,000% it was the right decision for you at the time. I knew for a fact. I'm like, all right, I need to figure this out, and I don't. It's not fair to like try to bring you in on this road of like having to figure it out. Why figure it out? And so the thing that I respect about you that was that I got the highest respect for is that it was the communication aspect of it. And you communicated with me and you said, hey, whatever I need to do, I'm not going to leave you hanging. And I'm gonna support in whatever I can because we've had people that have left us and just kind of high and dry. And so, I really respected that about you and supported you 100%. And so, um, I guess just even talking, I know that we talked about that, you would go from a larger corporation and then eventually come back, and we had kind of talked about that. But I think I would love to hear your, perspective on that of like making that decision because again, I think it was the right decision because there was a lot of uncertainty around the structure of everything.
Yeah, yeah. As it was for you, like it was a hard decision for me also. Like I think at the moment it was like 4 years with D&D design and screen printing. Um, like I said before, like I was pretty much like the artwork department. So I was kind of at a crossroads where it was like, yeah, I've been here 4 years. Like, have we progressed enough where I feel like I can do this for the rest of my life, or should I experience anything else? Because literally, like out of college, this was the only thing I've experienced. Yeah, and at the moment, like being a startup screen printing shop, like I give it up to you too. Like it's a lot to manage, but yeah, the organization just wasn't really there for me at the moment. I didn't know if I was able to grow anymore in my position also. So I think at that time I was just like, hey, I'm just going to shoot out my resume to a few different places to see what sticks. Um, Once I got that offer, yeah, I just clearly communicated with you. I was just like, hey, man, I don't want to leave you cut and dry with this. Like, I want to figure out how we can just transition out. Um, I think at the moment too is just pressures are just people around you too, where it's just people are getting jobs, they're working for corporate companies, they're getting benefits, they're getting healthcare, they're getting dental, eye insurance, they get stocks too. And at that moment, I was just like, hey, like I haven't experienced any of this stuff. Like let me try this out. So yeah, I clearly told you, and I was just like, hey, I do want to explore this, but I don't want to leave you hanging also. So I think at that time we worked something out where I worked part time with you guys, but then I was also working a full time job at the corporate company. Um, I could go in a little bit more about like how long I was there too. I was there for probably about a year. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it wasn't for me at the time. Like it just going from working at a screen printing shop and working with so many different brands and getting to work with companies that you like pretty much are helping from the ground up sometimes too, especially when people are coming to you with like brand new fresh ideas and they're like, hey, can you help me create a logo? Can you help me create this design where it's going to elevate my brand? To working for a corporate company where it's just like you're fit within these like brand standards and you're working on the same thing like every day. Um, I soon realized that, it wasn't for me, but I did learn a whole lot going corporate. I just never worked under like another creative director, other designers around me. I was always just like my own creative department. So I had nobody to learn off of. Um, so definitely an eye-opening experience. I learned so much at the corporate gig. Like I don't take it for granted at all. But I was able to bring what I learned there to, what we're doing now with Curio. Like I tell you all the time that like, hey, like if it wasn't for me doing that leap of faith and, working at a corporate gig for a little bit, I would never have been able to bring my experiences and bring it to Curio.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like I said, I agree. It was 100% the right move at the time. And I think what's really important around this and what I took away from it is really around being okay with the uncomfortable conversations and communication, because I know that was uncomfortable for you, right? Like having to say
Yeah.
that when it was like, all right, cool, we're jumping into a creative agency and you're our only creator, creative pretty much, and then that has to do that. It was an
Yeah.
uncomfortable conversation, but it's how you handle that, right? And I think it was very yeah, I just had a lot of respect. And I was like, regardless of whatever happens with this, if it, if you do come back or whatever, like I support it. And I really appreciated the communication. And so I think that, um, anyone listening that's, struggling with making a decision, I think you have to lean in on your gut and what feels right. And sometimes it's going to be, uncomfortable in the beginning to navigate that or make that decision. But if it's something that's weighing on you, to be able to do that and to keep that communication open in those relationships, right? I think the relationships are the biggest deal, and it was good. It worked out.
Yeah, yeah, and the main thing for me too, just like I did sit on it a lot, where it's just like, how is he gonna react? Like, like we've been working for so long, we had so much trust within each other, where it's just like, is he gonna be mad? Is he gonna like, how's he gonna react? Is this gonna ruin our relationship? As because not only are we're coworkers or whatever, but we're actually friends too. So like, I didn't want
100%.
that to ruin our friendship also, but yeah, yeah, I always appreciate like how you took it too. Like honestly, once I told you it was far from what I thought it was going to be, you're very supportive. You're just telling me like anything that I needed. I believe they called you and they asked about like my work ethic
Mhm.
and everything. Like you had nothing but good words to say about me. So that meant a lot to me. And like yeah, like I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's important, right? It's like a lot of times I think the old narrative is like business is business, right? And people that you're in business with or work with, whatever, are not your friends. And I think that thinking is old, and I just don't think that is the right way to do. It's like if I don't want to be working with somebody that you don't like enjoy or have a friendly relationship with. And I just think that
For sure.
it was just cool, and I appreciate that. And again, like I have full respect for that, and I'm very glad. And it's been dope to see kind of your progression over the years. And we've been growing together. Like you really never stopped. We never stopped working together. You always did even freelance on the side, and you stuck true to your word, even if you had to send some stuff at like 12 at night. If you said that you were going to do it, you did it. And I think that was super helpful and easier for me to navigate through, throughout the whole thing. And so I think, talk a little bit about, so you were there for, was it a year? It was over a year, right?
That's probably like a little bit over a year, but yeah, I definitely wanted to stay there within a year. But we were in conversation the whole time because we were working on other projects. But yeah, I think it was a little bit over a year. Yeah, I decided to move away from it. I think just because of what I stated earlier, like you get the freedom to do only a specific amount when you're working for a corporate brand. Um, so I was ready to come back, especially like we had conversations throughout too, and you're saying like the potential clients and projects that we had in the pipeline. So that was always exciting for me too. And hey, being in an agency right now, aside from like screen printing and all that, like you do get to work with so many different clients. Your work is never dull because you get to work on so many different aspects where it's like we work with the Warriors, Starbucks. We work with small businesses. We work with schools. there's so many different areas that you can work on, that makes things interesting versus like if you were in a corporate gig, like, you're kind of stuck to which you have to work with.
Yeah, 100%. I think the transition also of you coming back was the timing of it was fascinating and how it kind of all transpired. And I think that I was working throughout that year of like, okay, how do we create something to get retainer clients to be able to do this, to be able to commit and kind of be a little bit more stable financially and just in a process standpoint and everything like that. And I think that we got to that point and we, of course, kept that communication open. And so what was the deciding factor? I know that we made an offer and then you went and traveled. Um, what was that like? Because I think that that was a very interesting thing of how you kind of transitioned out of that, did the part-time traveling and then kind of came back. What was that like?
Yeah. At that time, I knew I was going to quit the corporate job. We had conversations about like, hey, you were saying that you could bring me on, but not like a full time gig at the moment. I think it was like a part time gig. So yeah, I've always wanted to travel the world. And I think with being a graphic designer, even nowadays, like with COVID and everything, it's a lot easier to work a remote job. So I had pitched the idea like, hey, I was really thinking about traveling for maybe a year or so. Um, would you be able to do some type of, part-time thing with me where I get to travel and I'll work part-time and do stuff with Kurieo at the time. And then that was our agreement. So I traveled Asia for I think about 6 months. I went everywhere from like Japan, Vietnam, Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, and yeah, like the time difference actually worked out with everything with Curio because you guys would email me. It would be like the end of your guys' day, but I would start up my day. So literally would just work, do everything for Curio, and then go and adventure out for the rest of the night. Um, yeah, definitely a cool experience.
When did you
Really,
leave? That's the funny part.
yeah. So at the time, it was Japan that we were at last, and then COVID had hit. So there was this big cruise ship that was docked in Yokohama, and a lot of people were stuck on that cruise ship because of COVID. Um, a lot of friends and family were, texting and calling too, and just like, I think you guys need to come back home before they close off the borders. So yeah, I was traveling with my wife, and yeah, we just decided we need to go back. So we booked our flights back, and literally a week after they closed the borders because of COVID to Japan.
So you left 6 months before COVID happened to travel and to do all this stuff.
Yeah,
And you were planning on going for 6 months, right? So it was like literally it was like right at the 6 months mark, everything happened.
yeah, it was crazy how that happened. But luckily, we didn't get stuck out in Japan because of the border closing. But yeah, I think everything just panned out like it should have.
What's interesting is that was like it was a preview of how we were going to work, right? Because
Yeah,
before we had worked in the office, so you were working remote. I mean, it's kind of similar to Anielle, what she's doing now, traveling across the country and doing design work and stuff like that. If you think about
yeah.
that aspect of it, I didn't even realize that was, it was kind of foreshadowed there. Did we do Zoom or how did we even communicate? I don't even remember back then. Was it just email?
It was mostly Slack, emails, a lot of phone calls. I don't know if we did Zoom at the time. I don't think we even like were Zooming a lot. It was a lot of phone calls. Yeah, I think it was main communication was just Slack. It worked out really well though.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And then you came back, COVID happened, and then everything, everything, everything changed.
Yeah, yeah, that was an interesting thing too. I know like Curio we started getting clients. Like while I was out in Asia, we started getting a lot of clients. We had a pretty good foundation. And I think when we came back to COVID, it was like a lot of uncertainty. Let me bounce a question to you. How did it feel being a founder of an agency And then within a time like COVID, how did that affect you, and like how were you able to get out of it?
um,
This is a bonus question, you guys.
yeah,
This is
you
not
were.
on script.
No, this is good. This is good because I mean, you were there, right? Like in terms of how we navigated, but from behind the scenes, I was like, I mean, shit, I was nervous, right? I think that from a
Yeah,
standpoint of being able to see all the new stuff happening ahead of time and seeing all the stuff and hearing everything, I started to kind of get prepared before everything kind of shut down and things, and so I didn't know what was going to happen because a lot of our stuff was tied up in events. A lot of our stuff was tied up in, doing merchandise, and things of that nature. And so it was a little, um, yeah, I had to be real. I was nervous. I didn't know how we were going to do this, but I knew that we would figure it out. And I knew the power of our kind of team. We were really small back then. I think it was what, me, you, Britt, Sheena, Vang, and Nick.
yeah,
Am I missing somebody? Yeah, because Kenzie wasn't even on yet. Um, and yeah, I remember having our calls and like, hey, I don't know what's gonna happen, but we're gonna figure this out, And I think that we, I have to say, the team was incredible because it was something that we all just came together and we said, all right, we're gonna figure this out. Like we're all figuring this out. It's not the fault of anybody's, it's not the individual fault of anybody. This is like a world thing, so we have to like come together and navigate this and figure it out. And I think that we did a really good job. I mean, I think during these last 3 years we grew a lot. We grew a lot. And I stepped away from doing content and a lot of stuff like that, where I'm like, okay, we really need to focus on building this business and getting things kind of organized and situated. And that was my focus for the last 3 years. And it's just a matter of just, one of my philosophies is there's always a solution. You just have to find it. And so I
yeah,
think we did really good. That's when we really started doing team meetings, weekly team meetings. Sheena and I really, like, on our calls, we said, all right, the world is uncertain right now, right? And we can't control anything. The only thing that we can control is what we can control. So let's have weekly meetings. Let's like look at our numbers every day. Like we can't control if a client comes here and orders something. The only thing that we can do is make our processes and systems better and make sure that we're prepared for an opportunity that comes. And that's all we focused on. And I think it really worked out because it gave us a sense of control in so much uncertainty,
yeah.
and I think it was a big lesson that kind of carried on. It was something that we did kind of by accident. And then it's something that we just carried on throughout the years. And we just kind of refined that and improved that. And we always just focus on things that we can control. And I think it's paid off really well.
Yeah, and I think it pushed us to be fully remote too. At the time, we had the office in Oakland at the art house. We used to work out of there, but yeah, once COVID hit, we were forced to, go fully remote. And I think that really expanded our team because we were able not to only look for creatives and, people that wanted to join our team within the Bay Area, but it expanded our reach. It's crazy because like now we have people in SoCal, Canada, East Coast,
East
New
Coast.
Jersey. Like we're all over the place. So I think it's definitely it was something that
It's
was
been
a blessing for us in disguise.
for for sure. And it was hard because, we always had physical locations, right? And we had offices and stuff. So I remember for me, difficult to kind of navigate going fully remote versus having an office and stuff like that. But I think you're right. We've been able to navigate it pretty well, and just, again, kind of fast forwarding to here, like you mentioned, we are working with Nike and Starbucks and doing big projects for them, the Warriors, and doing significant campaigns and executions for them. And it's allowed us to kind of be able to grow and scale throughout the years, and thinking about from those early days and how many times we've started and stopped doing everything different, and how many times we've like done this because we were such a small team. So anytime something came up, we had to take all of our focus and put it on that, but then the other things would drop, and then we'd have to shift our focus and put all the things on that, and that dropped. And so now having the team and the resources to be able to do this is really why I'm super excited about just doing everything different thing and what we're bringing to the world. because I feel like we have the team to support it, and it's just kind of crazy to see so many things moving around because I used to have to like touch and be involved in every single aspect of stuff. So now like the team is like, hey, what about this? What about that? So it's really cool to kind of navigate that. And I think from your perspective, you're managing a team now and you have, people under you and everything like that. And so it's cool to see you and to watch. And I think I would love to hear your take on that and just like what you're looking forward to next.
Yeah, always a goal of mine. We've had conversations about this before. Was just to lead a team. You know, before I used to just design purely, but now we have a team surrounding me and the creative team that can do some of the work that I would have been doing myself. I think that's huge, and running a team has definitely been a learning process for me also. Not trying to micromanage too much, but then also, trying to lead the designers with Lauren and Yale on the team just as much as possible, where they can, do their own great work. They're really talented people on the team, but yeah, it's definitely a learning experience for me. Still learning now, but it's awesome. This is my end goal. I've always wanted to be a creative director at an agency, so appreciate the
That's
opportunity.
dope. Well, you're doing a great job at it, and I'm super excited to continue to grow. We've been talking about launch and doing everything different, and soon rolling out the merchandise and all that stuff for a long time. So really excited for us to be able to do it right this time, to be able to share it with the world, and to be able to stay consistent and do that. So yeah, thanks again for everything. I truly appreciate you, your work, our friendship and everything like that. And excited to continue to build.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And yeah, would like to shout out real quick. I also do, I'm also a part of this podcast, Oddly Awesome Art and Culture podcast, where we highlight local artists from the Bay Area. We also do like DJ guest mix. So yeah, we do merchandise also. Check it out if you guys can at oddly.awesome and oddlyawesome.com.
And the collaborations has been dope. The coffee shop collaboration you did was super clean.
Yeah, we're getting collaborations now, which is crazy. So yeah, if you guys can follow, check it out.